What's going on, Wolves and Warriors? My name's Jase Stewart, and this is the Better Body Academy podcast, the #1 show for those looking to permanently overhaul their mind and body without dumb diets and unsustainable workout programs. We banish the fitness industry BS and replace it with science-backed strategies proven through countless client transformations. In the Better Body Academy, we help busy men and women around the world get unstuck and back into momentum so they start feeling strong and sexy again. Our mission is to transform 1 million lives, and you, my friend, could be next. And on that note, let's get straight into today's show. Welcome back to the Better Body Academy podcast. This is the podcast that you come to when you're sick of the dumb diets and unsustainable workout programs. And today, we're going to be doing a Basics 101 episode. And I want to give you a simple weight loss strategy. And you're going to look at me and go, well, that's simple, but I want to give you the reasoning behind this strategy. Okay, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. So firstly, I just wanted to kind of shout out my advanced clients in both masterminds for the depth of our call. I've just got off the mastermind call for the men for this week, and my gosh, it was just so good to have that call. It's really, really good to put an agenda away and just do what we call a hot seat and actually talk about what we're struggling with and how we go about overcoming that. And to those of you that are watching on that were part of the women's mastermind call last night, it was exactly the same thing. So congratulations, guys. All right, so let's set the scene for this episode. So I am currently away from my structure at the moment, which is in Canada. So at the moment we are in Corsica, which is this tiny little kind of French colony. I don't know if you call it a state or what it is. It's kind of like 12 or 13 kilometers above Sardinia. So out in the middle of, I think it's the Mediterranean. I haven't even looked at a map. But anyway, I do digress. I'm away from a gym, okay? And routinely, if I'm back in Canada or Australia, I'm going to a gym 4 to 5 times a week. I think gym training is the #1 thing you need to be doing to manage your weight. And there's a couple of reasons for it, but the main one is that when you are building muscle, you are building a bigger engine, which means you burn more calories even at rest, okay? So when I lose the capacity to go and train in a gym, obviously, as a coach, I don't want to all of a sudden just go and lose my entire health and fitness. And so I need to be mindful of what's actually going on and how I can offset calories in other ways. Now, in addition to the decrease and not being able to go to the gym, on the other side of the calorie equation, on the nutrition inside, naturally, if you are away from home and you're in another country, what do you start to do? You start to eat some of those countries' cuisines. Now, the 2 places that we've been so far are Italy, essentially, and France. 2 cuisines where the calorie count of these cuisines is high if you don't know how to eat the right stuff. Okay, so we go to Italy and it's all pizzas and pastas. And then we go across to French and it's all wines and cheeses and kind of all these different weird types of meat, which I do not dare to try. But anyway, I need a strategy where nutritional calories could go up if I'm not mindful, and gym-based training is going down, okay? And so what my simple strategy is to increase my step count. Now, that's going to sound to those of you that are already tracking your steps so obvious. However, I want to give you a little bit of reasoning as to why I think this is a really, really good indicator to track, especially when you're traveling, but even still when you are going about your transformation in your normal home state. So let's first talk about what contributes to the amount of energy that you spend on a daily basis, okay? There's a few main things. #1 is your base metabolic rate, okay? Just the calories that you need to burn every day to keep your engine going, okay? So we can call that the petrol tank size if our engine was just in neutral all day for 24 hours just running. That's called our basal metabolic rate. So that forms about 60-70% of our total daily energy expenditure. It's just keeping us alive, okay? Now, the bigger the engine that you have, the more calories that you're going to need. And this is why we do gym training, is because when we do gym training, we push that base metabolic rate up, meaning we burn more calories. We burn more calories, it gives us more wiggle room on the nutrition side. But there are a number of other things that make up the other kind of 30 to 40% of the daily calories that we burn. So let's talk about what they actually are. Number one, and a small proportion, is the energy that must go into breaking down the food that we actually eat. So it's kind of funny. To get the energy out of the food that we eat, we need to exhaust some energy. Kind of the equivalent of saying to fill up our petrol tank, get the energy from fuel that is, we need to actually have a human walk over to the Bowser, put it in, do the energetic work of getting the fuel out. Does that make sense? So we've got our base metabolic rate, it's about 70%, call it. We've got about 10% of our daily energy expenditure comes from the food, the energy that we need to break down the food that we eat. Now, the remaining 20% of the energy that we spend on a daily basis comes from activity, okay? Physical movement of any sorts, which kind of makes sense when you think about it, right? So, okay, we've got the basics of it, which is the engine, keeping the engine running, and then we've got the other part to it, which is the actual driving around of the engine, all right? And that's the activity portion. Now, we typically divide the activity down into what we call exercise-based activity and more incidental-based activity, or as it's known in the fitness industry, non-exercise activity, thermogenesis, and you might see this summarized or shortened to the term NEAT. So when anyone says NEAT, in terms of calorie burning, NEAT, the abbreviation NEAT, what they're actually talking about is the amount of calories that we burn just doing general household chores and all of the other things that is not structured exercise, like fidgeting, like walking around the house, like having a phone call and moving around. You see, one of the things that is completely misunderstood by most people is the amount of calories that are burned during the NEAT portion, included in the NEAT proportion of our daily energy expenditure. And so what happens is we glorify the amount of calories that is burned during exercise. And I think for a lot of people, it's a false economy. Let me explain what I mean by this. Typically what happens is people will go out and they will get stuck into a transformation, okay? And they're moving in a transformation and they'll make a couple of changes. One of the changes are that they'll start doing a little bit more exercise. The other thing that they'll do is they'll start eating cleaner, okay? Eating cleaner. I said that word eating cleaner purposely, okay? So they do two changes when they go into their transformation. They eat cleaner and they start exercising a little bit more in a structured manner. You see, the problem with this is when you don't fully understand what contributes to how many calories I burn on a daily basis, you might over-glorify the calories that you burn in exercise, overestimate that, and on the nutrition side, underestimate just how many calories you are eating, even if you are eating clean. So I'll go into the nutritional side. A lot of people understand that foods like avocado, for example, and olive oil are very healthy. And when we say that they're healthy, what we actually mean is that they are healthy from a heart health perspective. They typically lead to a decrease in our cholesterol level. That's a good thing, right? But what we don't often realize is these foods that are particularly fat-based foods are also really high in calories. And so who really cares about that? Well, at the end of the day, The only thing that matters if you are wanting to lose fat is to get into a position where you are burning more calories than you are taking in, and we call that a calorie deficit. So you might think that you're eating clean. Well, you might be eating good foods, you might be eating healthy foods, but that doesn't matter a shit. If you are eating too many calories relative to what you're burning, that's the thing that's going to cause you to gain fat. Does this make sense first? Give me a kind of a silent head nod if you're watching live or you're listening at home. Now let's get over to the exercise portion, and this is the number one mistake that I see being made, okay? So we decide as part of our transformation, in addition to eating clean, which we now know doesn't necessarily equate to eating less calories, on the exercise side, we start to really kind of get stuck into it, and we might commit to doing 3 45-minute exercise sessions at the gym, for example. And in our heads, we think to ourselves, I just did really, really well. I worked out really hard at the gym. I smashed that squat. I crushed that bench press. I did really well. What we don't know is that the typical gym session that lasts, say, 45 minutes, an hour, unless you're putting a bunch of cardio onto the back of that gym session, you probably burned 100 calories, okay? And for any of those who are in the academy, you know that, a Big Mac is 550 calories. So 100 calories burned by an hour of exercise versus 550 calories burned by taken in by a Big Mac. Well, you can see why you can't outrun a bad diet, right? And so what we tend to do is we switch from what we were doing before into this dedicated 3 to 4 solid exercise sessions of 45 minutes to an hour. Now, what do we do as a result of that? Well, the first thing that we typically do, and we do this subconsciously because we don't know any better, is because we've worked really hard during that 45 minutes on 3 or 4 days a week, we're tired because the body has worked at an intensity that perhaps it's not used to. And what do you think happens as a result of that? Typically, when you are tired because you've done some structured exercise, often which gets you either panting or feeling kind of sore, what will end up you'll do is you'll sit on the couch for a lot longer recovering from your exercise bout. In fact, study after study after study after study has shown that quite often when exercise-based calorie burn goes up in a transformation, NEAT or non-exercise activity, fidgeting, walking around the house, typically goes down. And the reason is because we're tired, or at least we think we're tired, so we act tired. So we sit on the couch and we do less. And so what ends up happening, let's say that you're awake for 15 hours a day. Well, for the hour that you were doing exercise, that was good. You all of a sudden really gave that hour, you gave it large for that hour of structured exercise. But if for the other 14 hours in the day, you were less fidgety, you were less active, you were more seat or lounge bound as a result of the exercise session that you did, your NEAT will go down. That is, the number of calories that you are burning from activity that's not structured exercise goes down. And this is the part that most people misunderstand. Their exercise goes up for the hour, but for the other 14 hours that they're awake, they're fidgeting, their mobility, they're walking around whilst on the phone, talking to friends, being with the kids goes down. The net effect of this is often that the 100 calories extra that you burned by doing your exercise was offset by the fact that in the other 14 hours, you did half of what you used to do, and that led to your overall NEAT going down. Does this make sense? The second thing, which I don't want to focus too much on in this podcast, is most often when we think that we've worked really hard, what do? We typically reward ourselves. So we think to ourselves, I worked really hard for that hour that I did today, and it's the 4th gym session that I've done this week. So if I told you that the average gym session, you're going to burn 100 calories, unless you do a slogging amount of cardio at the end, and then you say, well, I did 4 sessions. Well, I could say to you, despite what your Fitbit or Apple Watch says, you just did 400 extra calories than if you didn't exercise over the course of those 4 days. But what do? As one of my clients, M, says, we treat ourselves. So we say to ourselves, our brain plays this little trick on us and we say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to have 6 beers today, watching the footy, because I deserve it. Now, I'm not here to tell you you do or don't deserve it. That's for you to work out. But if you think that the 4 gym sessions of 100 calories each, 400 calories, was enough to offset you drinking 6 beers at 150 calories each, then your maths is wrong. Does this make sense? So, what am I kind of bringing to a conclusion here, guys? In any transformation, there are a few things that you should track and take notice of. Number 1 is the physical changes. You should be tracking your waist circumference, your hip circumference if you're a woman, and certainly your weight. Number 2, you should be paying attention to your photos on a weekly basis, always comparing the new week's photos to the baseline photos that you took when you started your transformation, so you can really see the changes that you've made over time. Third, you should be tracking your nutrition. The nutrition is the biggest thing. And as we've talked about throughout this podcast, you cannot outrun bad nutrition, okay? This is why inside of the Better Body Academy, we give our clients basic nutrition targets and we tell them we don't care what you eat. As long as you stay within these targets, you will lose weight, because it doesn't matter how you dress it up. It doesn't matter. It's not sexy. Fat loss comes down to being in a calorie deficit. But the 4th and very important point of this podcast is that you should be tracking your steps. Why would we track our steps? Why is it so important? Well, of all of the components of NEAT, non-exercise activity calories burned, okay? Of all of the components that make up NEAT, the biggest one is just walking around, being on your feet. I want you to just look at me during this podcast. Yes, right? I am talking with my hands. All of this takes energy to do, right? That's on top of what the body uses to basically maintain itself. All of this fidgeting is burning energy. But think about it. If you have a sedentary job, and interestingly, and perhaps ironically, the job of an online coach is basically to be at their desk all day helping clients and developing content like this, I'm sitting down for most of my day. And so, if I'm sitting down and I'm tracking my steps and I can see that on the average day that I sit on my ass, I'm stepping 200 to 300 steps, I know that I've got to do something. If that count doesn't get, not 2 to 300, 2 to 3,000, I should say, I could literally sit there for the whole day and the only thing that I'm doing is getting up to go to the toilet or to take a phone call or to go and perhaps make a coffee. I could literally spend the day and just get 2,000 or 3,000 steps. So, in your transformation, is it possible that you might all of a sudden increase the exercise, but not keep the same level of step count high? Is that possible? Well, it is if you're not tracking. So what I want to see from my clients and from people who are about going on their own singular transformation, solo transformation, is that when you start to make changes to your nutrition and you start to increase the amount of exercise you're doing, we want to make sure that the step count doesn't drop. Now, I like to choose the number 10,000 steps. I don't really think that there is any kind of great science to suggest why 10,000 steps is 100% the best thing in the world. If it's 12,000 steps, is it 8,000 steps? Look, choose the number 10,000. I think it's a good number to choose. Whilst I have been abroad, every single day we have made sure that we have done a minimum of 10,000 steps. And I'm doing that because I know that if I don't do that, okay, the possible increase in calories that I'm eating is going to cause fat gain. And I don't want to do that. So I'm just walking and walking and walking and walking. And it's all here on my Apple Watch. I'm able to see it. And guess what? Every day that I hit another 10,000 steps, I stay in a streak. At the moment, I'm up to, I think it's a 14-day streak of 10,000 steps. So I look at that, and how do you think that makes me feel? Firstly, accomplished. Secondly, I don't want 14 green lines in the pedometer app, and then all of a sudden, an orange line or a red line where I didn't quite get there. So it's super motivating to have this tracking thing happening here. So I want to add one final comment. To our friends that are inside of the Better Body Academy, what will happen is when you start to commence your transformation and you start to go into a calorie deficit, naturally you will be tired, okay? You will be more tired than any other point in your life. The reason is because your body is intentionally running out of fuel. You're intentionally running out of fuel. We want you to run out of fuel so that the calories have to come from somewhere, your belly, okay? So you will be tired. But what often happens is when you go into a calorie deficit and you feel a little bit more sluggish, but you're still willing to grind through your exercise session, what goes down is your NEAT, especially your step count, because you're tired and you might not notice. And if that happens, quite often it leads to plateaus, okay? So one of the best things to understand whether you can explain away your plateau or not is, where is my nutrition calories? How many days a week am I training? And then in the middle lies, has my step count changed? Okay? Because if you think you're in a plateau, but actually what's happened is your step count's gone down, despite the fact that your nutritional calories are going down, then there's the solution. If your step count is at 2,000, well then we need to get it to 10,000 consistently. And quite often, that's enough to kick you back into a fat loss phase. Does this make sense, guys? So I hope this has been helpful. Obviously, it's a deep dive into a somewhat simple topic, but what I'm trying to do here is encourage you to be active in tracking your Apple Watch, your Fitbit, your Garmin, or just your phone health app, whatever it is, tracking your step count and being consciously aware of it so that you can keep an eye on it. This is a very, very simple strategy, but it works. So that's what this is all about. It's about trying to give you simple, practical, applicable strategies that you can just get involved with. And as Em says in the comments on Facebook, it's been neat. You're a smart ass, Em, and I love it. Guys, this has been the Better Body Academy podcast with another episode, crushing these dumb diets and unsustainable workout programs. I will see you in the next episode. Wolves and Warriors, thank you so much for tuning in. If this podcast is hitting the mark for you and giving you the confidence to start your own personal journey, I want you to hit me up on Facebook or head over to my Instagram at JStewart_Better Body Academy and DM me with the words Better Body Academy. I want to give you the tools to permanently overhaul your mind and body without dumb diets and unsustainable workout programs. Our mission is to achieve 1 million lives transformed. And you, my friend, could be next. So hit me up on Facebook or head over to my Instagram at @JStewart_BetterBodyAcademy and DM me with the words Better Body Academy, and we can have a chat about whether we can help you with your transformation goals.